Susan is employed by Sight Scotland and she's here on behalf of the Vision Collaborative Scotland. And Susan's going to speak to us this morning about rehab in Scotland and what's happening there.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Well, good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see everyone here today, and great to see that we've got folks here at the length and breadth of the UK, which is fantastic. As Fiona has said, my name is Susan Shippey. I'm the Head of Strategic Partnerships at Sight Scotland and Sight Scotland Veterans, and I chair a group called Vision Collaborative Scotland. And there are a few Vision Collaborative Scotland members in the room today, which is brilliant. So I'm here today because Fiona's asked me to come and talk about HAB and rehab, actually. So rehabilitation primarily, and a wee bit about HAB on the end in Scotland, and how we're tackling the systemic issues around vision rehab in Scotland at the moment. And so I've got about 25 minutes worth of slides. I think you may have had the slides in your inbox. I think Raquel's been busy sending them out to folks. And so there's plenty of time at the end for questions. And as Fiona has indicated, I've actually got a few questions for you as well. So I'm hoping it will be a mutually beneficial conversation at the end. And those who know me, there's many people who have before in this room know I like questions until the end and just let me get through the presentation. And did anyone lose me there? Actually, I had a wee warning flash up on my screen.
Yes, we did, Susan.
I do apologise. I'm back in the room, I think. Yes, a mutually beneficial and a casual conversation at the end would be fantastic. So I'll read everything that's on the slide, and I have a small number of images and figures which I will describe to everyone. And I know that you've had the deck in advance of the presentation. So Raquel has very kindly agreed to progress the slides for me. And so if you could put the presentation up on the screen, Raquel, that would be great. Thanks very much. And maybe just move to the second slide, actually, because we're on to the picture. Thank you. That's absolutely super. Can everyone see that? There's an image on the screen. Any problems? Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. So this is an image of three people working together to build an enormous light bulb. It shows that each of them is needed, and it really shows how we are working together in Vision Collaborative Scotland to tackle the big issues which no one organisation can tackle alone. Vision rehabilitation has definitely been identified as one of these big issues. So I'll now go on to describe the purpose and history behind Vision Collaborative Scotland before going on to share our work on vision rehab system improvement. So, Vision Collaborative Scotland, our purpose is to work together to support people who have vision impairments to live fulfilling and active lives. We see this as being set within a context of an inclusive Scotland, which chimes with Scottish Government policy. We amplify the voices and needs of people with vision impairment and their families, and are led by those voices to identify shared priorities to work on. And we are working together to develop sustainable solutions. So it's a very important part of our work, not to think short term, but to think into the long term to benefit people with vision impairment and their families across Scotland. So we're on to the next slide now with a bit of history. So in 2021, a group was formed called the Scottish Vision Services Steering Group. It had a terrible acronym, SVSSG. However, it did some really amazing work. In 2023, the group launched a low vision rehabilitation course at Glasgow Caledonian University. That course yielded 19 fully qualified rehabilitation specialists, which added hugely to the Scottish workforce, of course. The course was always intended as a kind of quick, one-off, effective fix, and the university course was only offered for 1 year. In 2025, Sight Scotland appointed myself as Head of Strategic Partnerships. This is part of an approach of generous leadership of the sector by an investment. And so my salary is covered by Sight Scotland and by grant funding. We renamed our group to get rid of the horrible acronym and make sure that it properly described what we do, and we renamed ourselves Vision Collaborative Scotland, and I am currently the chair of Vision Collaborative Scotland. So let's see who the members are. We're on to the next slide now. So, as I said, some of the members are in the room. It's lovely to have you. Sight Scotland and Sight Scotland veterans, for whom I work, act as the chair of Vision Collaborative Scotland, and Visibility Scotland's Laura Walker, the chief executive of Visibility Scotland, sits as vice chair. We also have representatives from Guide Dogs, the RWPN, RNIB Scotland, the Scottish Sensory Hub, that's based at the Health and Social Care Alliance Scotland. We have a rep from TPT, Thomas Pocklington Trust, and we have Fiona from Visionary. We're delighted to have Visionary join us quite recently, because Visionary adds a critical link to the local sight loss societies in Scotland, some of whom are here today, which is brilliant too. And I have regular communication with Fiona backwards and forwards, and through the Visionary Scotland group, which is chaired by my colleague Nicoletta Primo. So let's look at the membership model now. Thanks, Raquel. So we have both full members and co-opted members of Vision Collaborative Scotland. All the larger organisations sit as full members, and the RWPN, the Alliance and Visionary sit as co-opted members. It's currently free to join, but we are considering charging an annual fee for membership, because what we've done this year is we've charged the larger partners the actual costs and divided them up between us as agreed. And so we may be moving towards an annual membership fee, but we are very keen to develop a value proposition for the group to prove that we can do good things together, to make joining and paying some money to join the group an attractive proposition for our members. So let's move on to look at systems change. So vision rehabilitation, as you all appreciate, there's a huge amount of knowledge in the room and experience. You know that improving vision rehabilitation will require a systems change approach, because it's set within a very complicated context. Now, from what I understand of systems change, you need to look at things in a holistic way, which we're definitely doing, looking at entire ecosystems, the policies, practices, power dynamics, cultural norms, and the way resources flow around the system. You need to look at the long-term impact of what you're doing. As I've already said, we are future focused in Vision Collaborative Scotland when we're looking at vision rehabilitation. Systems change requires collaboration, and that's exactly what we're doing. It's even in our name, Vision Collaborative Scotland. And also, when you're taking a systems change approach, you have to be adaptive. And we've certainly realised that within our work on vision rehabilitation and the other work that we're doing. It's a very fast moving landscape, and we are adapting and changing and iterating all the time when we're looking at this systems change approach. So in terms of identifying the issues that we are working on in Scotland, the biggest thing is a workforce crisis. That's the first point on this slide. We have an ageing profile of staff. Research carried out in 2021 and 2024 by the Scottish Sensory Hub and Visibility Scotland, respectively, showed that we had an ageing workforce, with 55% of the current VRS population being over 50 years of age. Now, we do recognise that people may work on long past what would be seen as a traditional retirement age, but we also can't count our chickens on that. And so we really need to look at developing a pipeline of new staff, newly qualified staff into the country. We identified huge recruitment difficulties, particularly in more remote areas. in terms of recruiting qualified vision rehabilitation specialists. And what was very clear from both pieces of research was that many organisations were unwilling to send their staff to Birmingham for university due to the additional costs associated with staying out of the country and travel, and the time that would be lost to the organisation from doing so. In terms of legislation in Scotland, vision rehabilitation is not a statutory requirement. The legislation we have in Scotland is more focused on the assessment of need rather than what exactly must be provided to meet those needs. And so that's an additional problem that we face. We also have low recognition and poor understanding of the profession in health and social care partnerships. That was identified in both pieces of research, partly because I think we have single rehabs working in health and social care partnerships alongside other disciplines, many of whom are managed, of course, by managers who are not qualified vision rehabilitation specialists. And the profession is at the moment unregulated with no recognised quality standards. Although RWPN membership provides that members are bound to keep their continuing professional development up to date, which is fantastic. The problem we have in Scotland is that many health and social care partnerships do not require their rehabilitation specialists to have RWPN membership, nor may they, in many cases, they would not pay for that. And when contract specifications are drawn up, we have seen many where RWPN membership is not mandatory. So although we have an amazing vehicle in RWPN, Scottish organisations are not necessarily taking advantage of that. So if we move on to the next slide, what are we doing to address some of these issues? So I'll describe our programme for the financial year that we're in and beyond now. So this takes the form of 3 spheres of action. The first one is the development of a VI rehabilitation training programme for specialists and assistants at the University of Strathclyde. And this has an attendant sponsorship programme that we've organised. The second piece of work is evidence-based joint campaign and policy work. And thirdly, we have research. So we're carrying out some research at the moment into the impact of vision rehabilitation and habilitation. And we're also carrying out a Scottish Community Services landscape review for vision impairment community services. So I'll move first to professional education and tell you a bit more detail about our professional education work. So if we move on to the next slide, this is an image of the web page for the new postgraduate certificate and diploma in vision rehab at the University of Strathclyde. And I'm very excited to announce that the course starts next week. So it starts on Monday. This is a distance learning course with added training and assessment centres for in-person teaching. Each student must have a mentor from their own employing organisation, and if they don't have a practicing vision rehabilitation specialist to mentor them, they will be provided with one. Now, Simon, who's on the call today, Simon Labette of RWPN, working in a personal capacity, and Laura Walker, the CEO of Visibility Scotland, who, as you know, are both very experienced rehabilitation specialists, have developed the course content for this. And it is based within the Department of Biomechanical Engineering at the University of Strathclyde. So the course was hugely popular. You will not be surprised given the problems that I have described earlier on, and was closed towards the end of last year for new applicants. And we have 16 postgraduate diploma students who have applied for the course and 4 for the postgraduate certificate. They may not all convert into, we'll just stick on that slide for now. Sorry, Raquel. So yes, they may not all convert into students on the course because the course was applications that have been coming in, as I described, up until the end of last year. And finance, we do appreciate, is a problem. And we're going to be issuing the scholarships today. So organisations will know their financial position soon, but I'm very hopeful that the course will remain well subscribed. And I've not been one of the course content developers, as I have to confess, I'm not a qualified rehabilitation specialist, although sometimes I wish I was. But I know that you'll be very interested in the course content. And so if you move on to the next slide, in true Blue Peter spirit, here's a content provider that I made earlier. So Simon, I'd like to invite you to come in at this point and maybe describe a bit more about the postgraduate certificate and postgraduate diploma.
Thank you, Susan. I'll focus on the certificate because those are the parts of the course that have been fully written, and I think that's where the main focus of interest comes from across the UK at the moment. The Introduction to Vision Impairment module, I say all three modules are the kind of things that feature in the first year of study at BCU and on the VRT course for the apprenticeship. So the way they're structured naturally leads on to year two anyway. What happens in Introduction to Vision Impairment is around the anatomy of the eye and the consequences when aspects of the eye don't work. And so there's looking at the main causes of sight loss. That module also looks at emotional well-being and models of adaptation. It looks at human guiding. And so there's quite an intensive amount of study on how you do human guiding properly. The assessment and research methodology very much focuses on how to conduct assessments. And that's a very fundamental skill that I think all courses seem to embed early on. And so we've taken the decision to include that in the certificate. And so you're looking at multiple impairments, the impact on how you do an assessment, how you factor that in, on risk, environmental risk, and risk related to health conditions. And looking at research methodology, looking at how you find out more information about how the community works, how support systems work in your area, and how you also find out more information about certain subjects if you need to. And 1.3, independent living skills and communication tools, looks at independent living skills and how you teach them. The emphasis is on teaching the skills, and on personal care, how you teach personal care strategies, and how you work with other health professionals whose job that is as well. It also includes IT, and so the kind of areas of study map very similarly to those covered at BCU and VRT. So looking at mainstream accessible communications and how you adapt them. And it also includes Braille, the ability to teach to grade 1. Susan, I won't go into year 2 if that's okay. That hasn't been written yet. But I suppose what you will deduce from year 2 is what you're not qualified to do after coming out of the certificate is any aspect of orientation and mobility beyond human guiding, and nor low vision therapy. Okay.
Thanks very much, Simon. That's been really helpful, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you at the end as well. Thanks. So if we move on, I would like to tell you a little bit about the scholarship programme that we've got organised for the VI Rehab courses. We have had a grant award from the RS MacDonald Charitable Trust, which is a charitable trust which operates in Scotland. And the scholarships cover 40% of the course fee, with the expectation that the employer pays the remainder of that. And we are very keen to strengthen the sector and that employers invest in their employees. The scholarships are available for certificate and diploma students, and the employer must have a role available or under development so that their student can practice as a vision rehabilitation assistant or a vision rehabilitation specialist as appropriate in the future. And as part of the scholarship package, we are providing support for students, mentors, and employers. And we will be investing quite a lot of time in making sure that the students are embedded in the work that we're doing to develop the whole sector around vision impairment in particular. And with this scholarship programme runs for 4 years. So we're delighted to be able to offer these scholarships for the next 4 years. If you have applied for a scholarship for your employee for the postgraduate diploma, you are assured that you will have the scholarship for those 2 years and the 1 year for the postgraduate certificate. So I'm delighted to be able to share today that we're going to be able to issue 6 scholarships, 5 for the postgraduate diploma and 1 for the postgraduate certificate for this coming year. And we have a mixture of charities and statutory health and social care partnerships applying for those for those scholarships. And the scheme is open to both. So we're very pleased to have a spread across the third sector and the statutory sector. So moving on now to talk about the second element of our work on vision rehab, which is policy and campaigning. So this is the second way that we're trying to address the vision impairment rehabilitation systemic problems. So we've done some preparatory work by hosting a fringe meeting at the SNP party conference that was really successful. And we had the cross-party group on vision impairment chair, who is an MSP, chairing the event. The social care minister, Tom Arthur, in Scotland, gave a response to our proposals, our asks. And we have, of course, engaged with the other political parties too in Scotland in advance of the parliamentary elections in May. Our asks or calls in Scotland, asks is used quite commonly. We are asking for Scottish Government and local government investment in VI rehabilitation. We are asking for quality standards to be agreed for Scotland. And we are asking for a workforce review to be carried out by the Scottish Government to look at recognition and regulation. Now, we have had discussions about the merits of pushing on a UK basis for AHP status or introducing social care regulation through our Scottish Social Services Council. But ultimately, I think that we would like the government to carry out the workforce review in collaboration with ourselves and other relevant stakeholders, and then decide the best regulatory route to follow. But we are very hopeful that this would lead to standardisation and legal protection for the job title also. So that is our policy and campaigning. I'm going to be working with colleagues in Sight Scotland and Sight Scotland Veterans Cause and Engagement Directorate to deliver the campaign over the coming months. And I've just written out to Vision Collaborative Scotland members. Those of you who are members have an email in your inbox asking for some positive stories and some negative stories about rehab. So positive stories about the benefits of vision rehabilitation, but also stories about when somebody didn't get the rehabilitation that they needed at the right time, or they were delayed in getting the rehabilitation and what that has meant as a consequence for them. Because you'll all realise that you need to bring campaigns that can be a bit dusty. You need to bring these campaigns to life, and we'll be doing that through stories of individuals in Scotland. So we're looking forward to receiving stories from our Vision Collaborative Scotland members to add to the ones that we've already collected from Sight Scotland and Sight Scotland Veterans. Now, I'll come on to talk about the third strand of our work on vision rehab, and that is research. So if we could swap to the next slide, that would be great. Thanks ever so much. Super. So the first thing we're doing, we realised that nobody had really mapped the vision impairment sector in Scotland. And because we're a relatively small country, it's a relatively simple thing to do, we think. So we have recently finished data collection from health and social care partnerships and charities, which is, we're calling this a clearer picture, and it's a landscape review. It identifies all community services, actually, not just rehab, all the community services such as advocacy, assistive technology, equipment provision, the CVI register, patient support / close services. But it will identify the scale and gaps in rehab services And we're looking forward to a report from our colleagues at Birch Tree Associates, who are carrying out the research on behalf of Vision Collaborative Scotland, and we're expecting that report in April. The second thing we're doing around research is what's called the IVY study, which is the Impact of Vision Impairment Rehabilitation Study. It's carried out through the University of Melbourne, and it will provide us with academic peer-reviewed evidence of rehabilitation and habilitation outcomes, and that is reporting in July 2026. We've got more than 10 providers across Scotland, some of whom are attending today, so thank you so much for your involvement. And that's been collecting data pre and post intervention with individuals receiving a vision impairment rehabilitation service. That's a really exciting piece of work, and we'll be reporting in July 2026. And we're now thinking to the future. Now we've got these two that are reporting quite soon, and we're looking at trying to investigate again the economic value of vision rehabilitation to the health and social care system, and that in Scotland would be to the Health and Social Care Partnership and to the wider NHS. Now, I think this would draw on the excellent work that was commissioned by RNIB, but it's 2017. The piece of work was called Demonstrating the Impact and Value of Vision Rehabilitation, that was delivered by the Office of Public Management for RNIB. It was an excellent piece of work, and it showed enormous returns on investment for vision rehabilitation. But we have the trouble now that it's old data. Things have moved on so much since 2017. So we have ambitions to repeat that piece of work in Scotland, and we'll be looking for funding to carry out that piece of work to add to the evidence base for vision rehabilitation. We know that statutory services are very, very concerned, even more concerned than they ever have been about the bottom line. And so we must be able to demonstrate the economic value of vision rehabilitation as well as the positive gains for individuals with a vision impairment. So now I've gone through the three pillars of our systems change approach to vision rehabilitation. The question in your mind might be, so this presentation was billed as both HAB and Rehab, wasn't it? So if we move on to the next slide, I'll share a little bit about our thinking about habilitation. So it was a bit of a liberty when I called this input rehabilitation and habilitation, because we're at the very early stages of looking at HAB. But every time I've spoken to an audience like this, the first question has always been, what are you doing about habilitation? And we are very aware that there are similar problems in the world of habilitation in Scotland, which mirror the rehab issues that we have. There is no training course in Scotland, and the research that we've carried out shows that there is demand for that. There are recruitment problems in a similar way. 40% of providers had difficulty recruiting appropriately trained habilitation specialists. As we know, there are only 2 places to train as HAB specialist in the UK, and people are keen for a course in Scotland. We have 14 HAB specialists registered with HAB VI UK in Scotland, some of whom are also registered with RWPN. But we are aware that some of those people aren't practicing, because in Scotland you tend to know everybody, and so we know all the HABs that are practicing, and so the numbers are small and the demand is high. I think with Vision Collaborative Scotland, there would be potential for learning from our work on the rehabilitation course to develop a HAB course for Scotland, but Vision Collaborative Scotland has not yet agreed to work on this. So I just want to be super clear that it's on our radar, but not agreed. But we are mapping the key stakeholders who would need to get involved in such a piece of work, because they would be different from some of the stakeholders that we have. We've got the Scottish Sensory Centre at the University of Edinburgh, which is a Scottish Government funded centre looking principally at sensory education. We have VINSIP, which is the managed clinical network in Scotland for vision impaired children and young people. We'd need to involve our colleagues at the Scottish Government. And Vision Collaborative Scotland members also, of course. So That's really all I have to say about HAB at the moment. That it's on our radar, and we're keen to work with partners to explore whether or not it would be something that Vision Collaborative Scotland might be able to get its teeth into further on down the line.
So just a huge thank you to you for all the prep that you put into this morning, for the conversations we've had before the session. Thank you so much. I think everyone here has really valued what you've had to say. You can see all the wee hands going all over the place clapping. So thank you for that.